Hey everybody, welcome back to the Game Nexus. It's Dwayne here, and today we're going to be talking about something that just popped up on the radar from Fantasy Flight Games at this year's Gen Con, and it's a little game called Star Wars Legion, and it kind of dropped like a big megaton nuke on the gaming industry, and sent shockwaves throughout all the different communities and such. And I guess the biggest reason why that is that Fantasy Flight has been steadily pushing hard on their Star Wars license for the past few years. They've got Star Wars X-Wing, Armada, they've got Imperial Assault and the new Star Wars Destiny, and essentially what they've been doing is they've been sort of moving across different genres, checking off the checkbox on the various types of games that exist in the marketplace. Now, up until recently, they haven't really put their foot in any kind of a large-scale infantry-style war game. I mean, Imperial Assault was the closest that we got as far as that experience goes, but a lot of these die-hard Warhammer players are always sort of at the top of their mind thinking, well, why do we not have a game like Warhammer with the Star Wars license? Now, there's probably some politics behind it, and there's probably lots of issues when it comes to why that wasn't happening. The biggest one was the fact that Games Workshop and Fantasy Flight did have a working relationship. This was, to bring this the Warhammer universe to players through things like the role-playing game and collectible games that Fantasy Flight would produce, and taking that off of the plate of Games Workshop. Now, one of those caveats, my guess is that they weren't able to move ahead with a competing product to Warhammer. So our hopes of seeing a Star Wars 40K style game was probably not going to happen until the relationship dissolved, or the agreement. Now, that actually has happened. So what we're seeing now in 2017 is you're starting to see a game like Rune Wars, which is a fantasy-based large-scale combat game, much in the same vein as Warhammer Fantasy was from Games Workshop. And now, this year at Gen Con, we see Star Wars Legion. So what do we know about Star Wars Legion? Well, outside of, obviously the standard marketing materials that Fantasy Flight has shown us, there were several demos being played at this year's Gen Con. Obviously, the product that they have to show us right now is the core box set. Which was basically a small force of Imperials, a small force of Rebels led by a commander on each side. We have Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. The figures themselves, there's been some size comparisons, look like we're going to be a little bit bigger than Imperial Assault. Interesting to note that they are on very Warhammer-esque bases, right down to the sort of the elevated size of the actual base, as opposed to Imperial Assault's very thin diameter bases. But for what we've seen, it looks like this is going to be a Galactic Civil War based era game. So much like Imperial Assault, where they haven't delved into the prequels or even the new movies, we're going to have this one rooted firmly in the original trilogy. One side of me is a kind of a missed opportunity thought. I mean, the bulk of ground warfare, as we've seen, took place during the Clone War era. So if you're looking at, possibly some of the best figures you could get a hold of, it would definitely be that era between, drop ships and all sorts of great machines of war. Now, this could be just the first wave of an ongoing product lineup. And to that point, I'm hoping that come launch in early 2018, we actually do have more than just this box set. Something that's happening with Rune Wars right now is that they have launched the Rune Wars miniature game, which is the same idea of a large-scale game, but they've launched it with 2 factions and a very limited miniature line. So what's happened now is the players are actually waiting for more product, as opposed to rushing out to store, having a ton of product on the shelf to be able to pick and choose from. This is an important thing, because if you look at what I perceive to be its main competitor, which would be Warhammer, Games Workshop has decades of product on the shelf to pull from. They have very in-depth and expanded product lines for each of their factions. So, as far as capturing the money from a prospective player, the players are at the mercy of GW at this point. They've got lots to spend their money on. When we get to launch at 2018 for this product, I really am hoping that we get more than just a core box set. I hope we do see some product to pull from. Otherwise, you might see a situation where people invest in the game, but very quickly outpace what's available, and then you may end up getting players who are maybe not as excited as they could be because they don't have new product to buy. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on as well, to see if that actually changes during launch. Now, another thing I'm hearing online as well is I think what we're seeing is trying to pull people's mindset. I mean, if you weren't a Warhammer player and say you just purchased Fantasy Flight Games product, you've been kind of spoiled in the sense that, X-Wing comes with fully painted figures. X-Wing also has a lack of scenery required to play the game. Imperial Assault, while not fully painted figures, were pre-assembled, just needing paint. Or some people chose not to paint them, period. But again, you also had a play mat in the form of tiles that are colored and have art on it. So you didn't really, have any kind of setup barriers. You just sort of pulled the box out, put the tiles out, and played. And thus with a lot of the Final Fantasy Flight Games product. This is interesting because some of the other chatter we're seeing as well is players who are a little bit upset by the fact that they need to assemble the figures, and even further to that this terrain, like I'm seeing lots of chatter on the fact that this terrain needs to be purchased, or you need to be able to buy this terrain, or it better come with terrain. And that, to me, that sort of paints the picture that maybe some of the people who are used to playing these games don't come from the Warhammer family where they're used to building terrain. Me as a hobby gamer, ever since I've been in this hobby, that's been the other part to the gameplay side of it, part of the thing that I enjoy. But again, knowing how to build terrain, where to find terrain, and just the fun of actually building a battle mat or a battle table, a game table. So it's just some of the things. It's interesting to see that people are actually bringing these up as negative points to the game, whereas your standard wargamer is quite used to having to do all this anyway. So that'll also be something to keep an eye on. But interesting, we also have a lot of discontent within the community on this now. We have a lot of people who have really been heavily invested in Imperial Assault, and to them, this announcement comes as sort of possibly a death knell for that game. A lot of people are talking, the chatter online is that, this kind of kills Imperial Assault, and some players are saying, they're not going to get Legion because they spent all this money on Imperial Assault and vice versa. It's quite an interesting thing that we have going within the gaming communities. So, taking a step back, I've played Imperial Assault for about a year and a half now, so I'm relatively new to that game. But I'm not new to the world of wargaming. So in particular, I have an opinion on the matter, and I think a lot of people are thinking that there needs to be a choice between the two games. They think that with the announcement of Legion being sort of a similar product in the sense that it uses, a similar scale figure, is now going to compete with Imperial Assault and perhaps even kill it. In my opinion, not so much. I kind of think that both products will exist and will cater to different player bases. You're looking at Imperial Assault as a board game-esque with campaign component to it, much in the same concept as Descent is. And I believe that product will continue to sell, and you'll still find people who like that style of gaming with it, as the skirmish, small teams, up close and personal. Looking at Legion from what we've seen so far, we're seeing, Galactic Civil War era figures. We're talking Stormtroopers, AT-ATs, Rebellion troops. Hopefully more. We haven't really seen what the product lineup's going to be, outside of the core box set that they've shown us. We can only assume that we're going to be delving into things like land speeders, air speeders possibly. I don't know if they'll go too far into the realm of starfighters, because we obviously have X-Wing and that might be just a different product line. But sure, hope that we see AT-ATs. We're going to see lots of machines of war from the Rebels and Imperials. And yes, we're probably going to see recasts of existing figures that they're obviously going to pull from the Imperial Assault library, right? So we'll see, lots of resculpts of possibly Han Solo. We already got one of Luke, and all the famous heroes. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that Legion also is going to have, the whole concept of troops. So, whereas Imperial Assault is, you might see 2 or 3 troops mixed in with your team, your list, which is comprised of some hero characters. Star Wars Legion will maybe have Luke Skywalker or Darth Vader, maybe another hero or commander. But for the most part, the players are going to be playing with generic armies. We're going to be seeing squads of Rebel troopers, squads of Stormtroopers. We won't see, a team completely fielded of, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, and Luke Skywalker. So to that point, I think the experience will be quite different. I think they've done a good job in sort of setting it up to cater to different people. Now, granted, this is just my opinion. I do plan on collecting both games and playing both games. I feel that they both have a part in the market. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the matter. There's lots of chatter about it. Weigh in on it, and I'd love to hear what you guys think of that. But keep an eye on the channel here, as well as our website at www.enterthegamenexus.com. Leading up to 2018, we don't know when, but early 2018 is a launch frame for this game. But we definitely are excited. We're going to see lots of content rolling out, I'm sure, and we'll do our best to keep up with it and make sure we give you guys our opinions and what we think of the product. So, like I said, like and subscribe us, and hit us up at the website, and throw those comments down below. And we'll talk to you soon.